Cannot live with you. It would be life. And life is over there. Behind the shelf. The sexton keeps the key to. Putting up. Our life his porcelain. Like a cup. Discarded of the housewife. Quaint or broke. A newer Sevres pleases. Old ones crack. I could not die with you. For one must wait. To shut the other's gaze down. You could not. And I stand by. And see you freeze. Without my right of frost. Death's privilege. Nor could I rise with you. Because your face. Would put out Jesus. That new grace. Glow plain and foreign. On my homesick eye. Except that you than he. Shone closer by. They'd judge us how. For you served heaven you know. Or sought to. I could not. Because you saturated sight. And I had no more eyes. For sordid excellence. As paradise. And were you lost, I would be. Though my name. Rang loudest. Won't heavenly fame. And were you saved. And I condemned to be. Where you were not. That self were hell to me. So we must meet apart. You there I hear. With just the door ajar. That oceans are in prayer. And that white sustenance. Despair. I Cannot Live With You, is one of American poet Emily Dickinson's longest poems, and perhaps one of her most tormented. The poem's speaker tells a beloved that they cannot live together, not because their love is insufficient but because it's overpowering. The thought of sitting beside this beloved's deathbed, or worse, being separated from them in the afterlife, is simply too much for the speaker to bear. They'd rather endure the despair of parting now than face those trials later. Like most of Dickinson's poems, this one wasn't discovered until after her death. It was first printed in the posthumous collection Poems 1890. I Cannot Live With You, Summary. I can't live with you because living with you would mean being fully alive, and life is something that exists elsewhere. It's over there behind the shelf that the churchyard keeper locks up. He puts away our lives as if they were his dishes. Our lives are like a china cup that a housewife throws out because it's too old-fashioned or because it's broken. She'd prefer some fancy new French china. Old cups just crack. I couldn't possibly die with you, because one of us would have to watch while the other's eyes closed for the last time. You couldn't do that. And what about me? Could I stand there and watch you die without wanting to claim my own right to die in that same moment? I couldn't be resurrected with you on Judgment Day, either, because I'd prefer your face to Christ's. Jesus's glorious visage would look dull and unfamiliar to my lovelorn eyes. I could only be happy if you were there, nearer to me than he was. Oh, with heavens judge us. You were faithful to your religion, or tried to be. I couldn't be so faithful. That's because your lovely face filled up my eyes. I didn't have any room left over to look at such a cheap pleasure as heaven. And if you were sent to hell, I'd be in hell too, even if all the heavens praised me as the greatest person who ever was. And if you were sent to heaven, and I to hell where you wouldn't be, it would be my own lonely self that would be my hell. Therefore, the two of us can only meet at a distance, you over there, and I over here, with only an open door between us, an open door made of distant oceans, and prayers, and that pale, blank nourishment, hopelessness. The agony of impossible love. Emily Dickinson's I Cannot Live With You is a tormented exploration of what it means to love someone you can't be with. The speaker's long explanation of why they cannot live with their beloved suggests that, in reality, there's nothing in heaven or earth they want more. Alas, for reasons the poem only hints at, there's just no way the two can be together, an unendurably painful predicament. Impossible love, the poem suggests, can feel like hell itself. The poem's speaker adores their beloved so much that the mere sight of their face is everything to them. The beloved's beauty saturates the speaker's sight, filling up their eyes until they can see nothing else. In fact, the speaker is certain that they worship their beloved even more than they worship their God. On Judgment Day, they imagine, they wouldn't be satisfied to gaze into the face of Jesus himself. They'd find that divine image plain, if their beloved's face shone closer by. Unexpectedly, the speaker gives this overwhelming adoration as a reason they can't be with their beloved, not as a reason they must be. Their love is so powerful, they explain, that if it were consummated in marriage, it must one day transform into soul-destroying pain. First, one lover would have to watch the other die eventually, which they could not endure. Then, they'd have to risk of being separated in the afterlife, perhaps because their romantic love displaced their love of God. That, too, would be unendurable. The speaker knows that even heavenly joy would be hell to them if their beloved weren't with them. The trouble here, of course, is that the speaker seems likely to go on feeling this way about their beloved whether or not the couple live together and marry. It would only be reasonable to marry anyway and at least get some joy out of life. But something in their circumstances makes this impossible. The speaker resignedly observes that the possibility of a life with their beloved is over there, out of reach, hidden away like a churchwarden's porcelain in a cupboard. This tidy, civilized metaphor suggests that fate or social convention prevents the couple from being together. The idea of marriage, for reasons the speaker doesn't reveal, has to be put up, locked away like the good china. The poem thus centers on a tragic irony. The speaker explains that the future pain of separation is the reason the couple couldn't possibly be together, but the pain of separation is exactly what they're suffering right now. Unfulfilled love, this poem suggests, is an unspeakable torment, leaving despair in its wake. This poem's speaker argument that they can't possibly be with their beloved might be a lament about a love that convention or fate makes impossible. On the other hand, it could reveal a deep fear that holds the speaker back. As the speaker observes, love inevitably comes with grief. Even the most adoring married couple will have to say goodbye to each other on a deathbed someday. The speaker might thus be trying to dodge the agony of eventual separation by resisting a relationship now. Anxiously avoiding the inevitable pain of love, in this reading of the poem, means holding the fullness of life and joy at bay, too. To live with their beloved, the poem's speaker says, would mean being fully alive, relishing the joy of being with a person whom they adore more than Jesus himself. But such a life, they lament, is over there, out of reach to them. That's because they're sure that, if they were married, neither they nor their beloved could possibly shut the other's gaze down, that is, watch while the other one died, as one day they would have to. If speaker had to do that, they fear, they'd want to claim their right of frost, committing suicide so that they could fall into icy death at exactly the same time as their beloved. Even if the pair died at the very same moment, the speaker frets, their problems wouldn't be over. There's no guarantee that they could be together in the afterlife, either in paradise or hell. Indeed, the speaker even feels frightened that their adoration for their beloved, having saturated them to the point that they no longer have room to love God, might be the very thing that will keep the couple from spending eternity together. All of these imagined fates, the speaker concludes, mean they simply cannot live with their beloved. The inevitable separation of death, and the possibility of separation after death, is too scary for the speaker to contemplate. Powerful love, in this speaker's view, is thus better put up, locked away, than embraced and consummated. But there's an irony here. By anxiously resisting entering a relationship now, the speaker has to undergo the very despair of separation they fear, without enjoying any of the pleasures of living with the person they love most. There's no escaping love, this poem suggests, and there's thus no escaping the pain of love. Fearing and avoiding a relationship can't save the speaker from their intense feelings. Explaining why they cannot live with their beloved, the poem's speaker observes that their adoration for this person has driven their Christian faith right out of their mind. Even Jesus's face itself, the speaker fears, would pale in comparison to their beloved's. Romantic love, this poem suggests, is so terrifyingly powerful that it can reorganize a lover's most fundamental principles and beliefs, perhaps even endangering their souls. One of the biggest reasons the speaker feels they can't marry their beloved is that they could not go on being a faithful Christian if they did so. Imagining the apocalypse when, according to Christian tradition, all souls will rise from the grave and face God, the speaker feels certain that even the face of Christ himself would seem plain and foreign next to their beloved's. In other words, they find their beloved's beauty so overpowering that their beloved has taken the place of God as the best thing they can imagine. The beloved has saturated the speaker's sight, filling them up until there's no room for anything as sordid, or cheap, paltry, and lowly as paradise. For that matter, the speaker feels their beloved's presence has become paradise to them, so much so that, if they were sent to heaven but their beloved couldn't come with them, they feel they'd be just as lost as if they'd been sent to hell. If things went the other way and the speaker went to hell alone, condemned to be where you were not, the separation would be worse than any infernal torment. The speaker thus rejects love in favor of their religion, not because Christianity has the stronger claim on their heart and mind, but because it's dangerously weaker than their earthly love. Intense romantic love, in this poem, can conquer a person so completely that even the fate of their own soul seems insignificant by comparison. Works cited: https://www.litcharts.com/poetry/Emily-Dickinson/I-cannot-live-with-u